Beauty of that child is the tragedy of the Trump presidency. He wants to be a cop. He knows what he wants to do. I hope he has a long life as a law enforcement officer. But I hope he never has to defend the United States Capitol against Donald Trump's supporters. And if he does, I hope he isn't one of the 6 who loses his life to suicide.
Nicole Wallace disgustingly looped in a 13-year-old boy with brain cancer into an attack on the president over January 6th.
White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt just torched MSNBC. And let's just say they didn't see it coming. In a bold, no-holds-barred statement, Leavitt called out the liberal network for spreading blatant lies about President Trump. Her takedown was fiery, unapologetic, and sent shockwaves through the left-leaning media bubble. And yes, we got all the receipts ready to go. But before we dive into the full breakdown, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a moment of the action.
Behavior of Democrats last night was completely disgraceful and demonstrated how severely out of touch they are with the American public. It was the most shameful moment in the history of presidential addresses in that beautiful chamber. In what was supposed to be a unifying moment for our country, Democrat members of Congress instead screamed at the President of the United States, who was just overwhelmingly reelected by their constituents, walked out of the chamber, and worst of all, they disrespected the American people.
Right out of the gate, Karoline Leavitt came out swinging, calling out the Democrats for what she described as blatant hypocrisy and utter disrespect toward Trump supporters. Before we get to the moment she directly takes aim at MSNBC, I want to show you the clip that set everything in motion. You need to see what sparked her passionate response. During President Trump's latest State of the Union address at the U.S. Capitol, Democrats pulled off a dramatic walkout. And let's just say, Karoline wasn't about to let it slide. She was about to expose their double standards and tie it all back to MSNBC. Watch this.
Democrats didn't stand to keep men out of women's sports. They couldn't even clap for a girl who got her head smashed in by a man on a volleyball court. Democrats didn't stand for an innocent and beautiful child who is surviving brain cancer. They opposed eliminating taxes on tips and Social Security. They didn't stand in favor of cutting taxes for hardworking Americans. They couldn't even clap for 2 mothers whose daughters were killed by illegal aliens. One of the only things that could get Democrats off their feet last night was cheering for Ukraine, not for America.
If you're looking for a living, breathing example of hypocrisy, the Democrats fit the bill perfectly. This is the same party that preaches unity, claims to value every voice, and denounces division, yet their actions tell a very different story. From cherry-picked outrage to glaring double standards, their growing list of contradictions isn't just ironic. It's a full-on exposure of the lies propping up their image. They perform for the cameras, then turn their backs on the very communities they claim to represent. It's political theater at its worst, and the American public is finally waking up to the act. And now, here's the moment Karoline Leavitt sets her sights directly on MSNBC.
They've allowed their Trump derangement syndrome to stop them from celebrating America and our people, and we will not allow them to forget that. And it's not just the Democrat Party. The mainstream media still doesn't get it. Last night, MSNBC's Nicole Wallace disgustingly looped in a 13-year-old boy with brain cancer into an attack on the president over January 6th. And CNN's first Chiron out of the speech called it divisive.
It's becoming increasingly clear that the Democrats and their echo chamber over at MSNBC thrive on one thing: hate. They claim to be noble watchdogs holding the government accountable, but their true motives are far from virtuous. Need proof? Just look at Nicole Wallace. In a moment that was as distasteful as it was revealing, she used a 13-year-old brain cancer patient to take a cheap shot at President Trump over January 6th. That's not journalism. It's cruelty disguised as commentary, and it tells you everything you need to know about their playbook.
Beauty of that child is the tragedy of the Trump presidency. He wants to be a cop. He knows what he wants to do. I hope he has a long life as a law enforcement officer. But I hope he never has to defend the United States Capitol against Donald Trump's supporters. And if he does, I hope he isn't one of the 6 who loses his life to suicide.
Yes, that's what a so-called seasoned MSNBC journalist said about a 13-year-old cancer survivor, simply because Trump brought him on stage. Let that sink in. Honestly, I hope that young boy never heard those heartless remarks, at least not until he's old enough to understand and process them. This isn't just upsetting, it's deeply alarming. It shows how blind partisanship can erode even the most basic sense of human decency. When loyalty to a political agenda outweighs compassion for a child who survived brain cancer, something is seriously broken. You lose your moral compass. You lose your empathy. You lose your soul. Sadly, that's where much of today's mainstream media seems to be, trading humanity for outrage and applause.
And CNN's first chyron out of the speech called it divisive. President Trump wasn't divisive. The Democrats were. And CNN was proven wrong by their own viewers, 69% of whom, in a post-speech poll, said they had a positive reaction to the president's speech.
Now, this is something. Nothing screams backfire quite like your own audience applauding the person you worked tirelessly to discredit. According to CNN's own post-speech polling, most of their viewers actually appreciated President Trump's address and the hopeful message he delivered. Just picture it. The same network that constantly tries to undermine him had to admit their audience was moved by his words. If that's not poetic justice, what is? It's the kind of unexpected twist that breaks the narrative and highlights the growing disconnect between media elites and everyday Americans. But Karoline Leavitt wasn't finished. She kept the heat on the legacy media with her relentless takedown.
It's sad and frankly pathetic that Democrats and liberals in the legacy media continue to allow their hatred for the president to override their love for our country. But nevertheless, the president will continue to unify this nation through policies that are grounded in common sense and that uplift all Americans.
Unlike Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, who often cater to establishment narratives and appease the woke crowd, President Trump stands firm in his convictions. He unapologetically states that there are only two genders and that biological males have no place in women's restrooms or sports, and he's not backing down. While others cave to pressure or perform political theater, Trump holds the line, fiercely defending common sense and reality in an age where truth is often twisted to fit agendas. It's that unwavering stance that continues to earn him the support of millions. And this is where things started to heat up. Piers Morgan, watching from across the Atlantic, took notice and called out the glaring hypocrisy. Here's a scathing take.
If Donald Trump could have scripted a reaction from Democrats to his speech, it would have been exactly what unfurled before our eyes last night. I was watching it live here in New York, and every time I thought they couldn't plunge any lower, they plunged a little bit lower. And if you can't bring yourself to get up onto your feet and applaud a 13-year-old boy who's had, I think, over a dozen brain cancer surgeries, who's come through, who's survived, and who has a dream, and that dream was to be a Secret Service agent. And the President of the United States, in front of the world, gives him that moment and makes him an honorary member of the Secret Service. If that doesn't move you, just as a human being, putting aside politics, to get up off your backside and applaud that brave little boy.
Unfortunately, that's what hatred does. It clouds your judgment. You witness moments of genuine bravery that deserve recognition, yet remain so fixated on destroying your political rival that you can't bring yourself to acknowledge the courage right in front of you. This is exactly why so many Americans have turned away from the Democratic Party. It's become a party of convenience ethics, quick to applaud anything that aligns with their agenda, but completely blind to valor or virtue if it comes from the other side. That's not leadership. It's hypocrisy disguised as righteousness. And voters are starting to see through the act. It's also why figures like Bill Maher are distancing themselves from the extremes of leftist ideology.
I want to know why I have a bug-up mind about the left more than I used to. It's like this. There's an ugliness they never used to have. The liberals I grew up respecting, none of them are like this. Going after the wife, even the mafia doesn't do that.
The venom coming from the left is increasingly hard to ignore and genuinely sickening. They behave as if they hold a monopoly on the nation's values, expecting every American to fall in line without question. Anyone who dares to think independently or step outside their rigid narrative is mocked, silenced, or cast aside. They've sealed themselves in ideological echo chambers, completely unwilling to engage with differing viewpoints. That kind of intellectual arrogance is exactly why their message keeps missing the mark. It doesn't resonate with everyday Americans because it's disconnected from reality and driven by a thirst for control. People are tired of being told what to think, how to feel, and who to hate. That's why the left is rapidly losing public trust, influence, and the support of the people they claim to represent.
The fact that Democrats couldn't do that, these are the people, Laura, who like to have the hashtag be kind on their social media biographies. These are the compassionate people. These are the ones who care more than anybody. But look at them last night. Look at the way they treated DJ Daniel. Look at the way they treated the family of that poor girl. Look at the way they behaved with their stupid signs, which meant no sense to anybody. It looked like a sixth form common room in a college. Look at everything they did, and the walkouts and all the rest of it. If you're Donald Trump, you are watching that back today and laughing your head off.
What the Democrats consistently fail to grasp is that in their relentless effort to demonize Donald Trump, they're rapidly draining what little credibility and moral authority they still claim to have. Ironically, in trying to portray him as unfit, they're casting Trump as the more composed, thoughtful, and even compassionate leader. Case in point, when Trump brought that brave young brain cancer survivor on stage, it wasn't just a gesture of kindness. It was a calculated move and a brilliant one. He knew their hatred would override their humanity, and he was absolutely right. Their refusal to even applaud the child didn't just expose partisanship. It laid bare the hollowness of their so-called compassion. All their talk of kindness, unity, and empathy was revealed as little more than scripted sound bites, devoid of sincerity. In a moment that demanded humanity, Trump held up a mirror to their hypocrisy, and they couldn't bear what they saw. Even Piers Morgan couldn't stay silent, unleashing pointed criticism at Nicole Wallace for her reaction.
What was that?
One of the most disgusting, shameful, reprehensible things I have ever seen on the news in America. And the bar was pretty high for that accolade. I thought what Nicole Wallace did last night in taking that boy's story and in a weirdly dystopian, horrific way, asking us to think about whether he might himself. What on earth was she thinking?
There's something deeply broken within MSNBC and among the Democratic elite, and Americans are waking up to it. That's why so many are walking away, switching sides, or simply distancing themselves from the chaos. This isn't just about political differences anymore. It's about basic decency, truth, and fundamental human values. The far left's obsession with control has spiraled into something darker and more dangerous. They demonize anyone who disagrees, erase dissenting voices, and twist every story to fit their narrative. The ugliness isn't subtle anymore. It's glaring. From snubbing child cancer survivors to viewing every event through a hyperpartisan lens, they've shown exactly who they are, and the public is done playing along. Americans are searching for something real, not rehearsed, not manufactured. They want compassion over cruelty, sincerity over spin, and more people are realizing they're not going to find on the far left, not anymore.
There was something wrong with those Democrats who didn't get up off their backside. There's something wrong with those MSNBC anchors. And it says an awful lot that they still pretend they are the caring ones, the compassionate ones.
The mask is finally slipping, and Americans are beginning to see MSNBC, CNN, and the Democratic Party for what they truly are, a self-serving, ego-driven machine powered by narrow, insular interests. Behind the polished headlines and performative outrage lies a disturbing disregard for the real needs and concerns of everyday people. These institutions claim to give a voice to the voiceless, but in reality, they suppress dissent, distort truth, and weaponize empathy for political gain. It's not about serving the people. It's about preserving their carefully crafted narrative. They only champion causes when it's politically convenient and ignore any facts that challenge their storyline. But the public is waking up. The virtue signaling is falling flat. Trust is evaporating, and the once powerful grip of unquestioned allegiance is loosening by the day. And with that, we'll wrap up today's video. If you appreciated this bold, unfiltered take, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content that cuts through the noise. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.